to Drummers Only Radio. Drummers Only is the UK's leading drum shop with store locations in Glasgow and Leeds. Our podcasts are full of interviews, gear reviews, and much more from the unique perspective of a drum shop. The show is hosted by two pasty Scottish dudes who talk real fast. Whoa, slow down there, Braveheart. So here's Chris, the Glasgow shop manager, and Adam, the social media manager. Be sure to like, subscribe, and let's do this.
Hello, everybody. This is Drummers Only Radio, episode number 45, I believe. And we are here with Mr. Neil Golding. Good evening, Neil. How are you?
Good evening. Nice to see you guys.
You too. Neil, for those of you who may not know, is a publisher. He owns Gold Media and Events, and you guys publish like Drummers Review and Bass Guitar Review, Electric Guitar Review.
Yes, we've got several review sites as well as shows. Yes, that's right.
But more importantly, this man is the man behind the UK Drum Show. So congratulations on being able to bring it back.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, amazing news, man. Amazing news. So you've moved, you're moving house.
We are indeed. I mean, for any of your viewers that have been guests to the show in Manchester over the last 3 years, 17, 18 and 19, we ran at Manchester, would have come to see that the show had grown year on year with exhibitors and with a great following. So it's we were getting to a point whereby we were considering the move. And I think with the lockdown and everything that came along, it just gave us time to reflect and think, well, look, if we're going to make the move, now's possibly the time.
Yeah. So what brought it on? Was it just change of scenery, or was it a business decision, or?
It was very much a business decision. The venue itself, we'd pretty much maxed out getting exhibitors and new people and companies wanted to come along and appear at the show. They tapped into what we've created in Manchester, and it's been a great vibe. So we were getting to the point that, well, when we concluded 2019, the exhibitors were very keen to rebook very quickly. Obviously, none of us knew that just a few months later we were all going to be where we are now.
Yeah.
And you know, to their credit, they've stuck by us. But when folks started to book up in 2019, we really did discover that we were running out of space fast. So I guess, you know, we just took the view, and we've had, believe it or not, we've had more inquiries from exhibitors wanting to come and join us, even throughout the lockdown. Not necessarily knowing at what point we would return, but there is so much built up enthusiasm for the show. There were businesses that wanted to be part of it when it came to return. So
what a problem to have. More people want to join.
Yeah,
you know?
Sure. Yeah. It's a good problem to have, but you know, and that's only part of it, of course. Of course, going to a bigger venue, it also was a consideration with not having a crystal ball for the next 12 months ahead. We had to also factor in if we needed to apply any form of social distancing. Going to the Liverpool ACC, the venue is so much larger.
Sure.
I mean, the exhibition hall itself is twice what people would have experienced in Manchester. Wow. So the hall is pretty much double, and the whole footprint of the show, from the queuing to the auditorium, everything else is a lot bigger. So that played another consideration, as well as exhibitors wanting to join us. We had to be aware of just being mindful of, if we needed to apply space and distancing, you know, God forbid, you know, April next year, 2022, this should hopefully all be, you know, a nightmare well and truly past by then. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So,
sure.
And that was a consideration with the auditorium as well, because guests that have been to Manchester, you know, there's been a couple of times where we've got quite close to capacity. I recall Benny Greb, you know, there were people standing at the back of the room. So the auditorium adds another 400 seats upon Manchester, which was 800. So it's now potentially got up to 1,200 seats if we need them. So again, it's just trying to second guess situations for 2022 with the considerations that we may not even need to put in place, but they're there if we need them.
Amazing. I mean, this is purely from a sort of back end point of view, that can't be a bad idea for noise pollution either. These things get loud, so more space means that, you know, as a retailer, for us, we can at least have conversations if you're a bit further away from someone else who's testing out gear and all that. So it's a great shout, man, even from our point of view, you know. So
it's a difficult one when it comes to drum shows, because they're always typically noisy, and you know, we have both exhibitors and guests that are so enthusiastic about the passion that they have for drumming, that it can get carried away and the volume does go up. I mean, we have the period of 15 minutes playtime, which is really 15 minutes of noise. And then we try to calm it down for 45 minutes that proceeds thereafter. But I mean, we're always kicking around ideas and suggestions. I mean, you know, in the past, there's been the suggestion of whether we have a quiet show where we don't allow, you know, instruments to be played, and more of an interaction with the brands, and they talk of it in more of a showroom environment. But I don't know.
Drummers are drummers, man.
Drummers are drummers. They want to hit stuff. They want to play stuff. And I think, you know, noise is a byproduct, and we try and manage that the best we can. Yeah,
and it's part of the excitement of the show. If you're 7 years old and you've just started playing, like, going to a drum show that doesn't make any noise would be a little... I think it would be a little disappointing, eh?
Yeah, and I've walked the halls. You know, when the show's in full swing, I often will walk around and check out what's going on in the booths. And funny you mentioned the youngsters, because we've seen some very enthusiastic boys and girls at drum kits. I mean, phenomenally good at such a young age. And I think that and well is part of it. Is the show is a family event. You know, we see Mars and Pars with sons and daughters, and it's really good to see that they come along and they're part of the day or the weekend.
Yeah, and they travel as well. We've dealt with people from all walks of all parts of the country, from the very north to the very south, east and west. So it's a pretty amazing community when it's all together.
Drummers are unique, I think, in that sense, which was, you know, when we made the decision to move to Liverpool, we did think, you know, the show has become established in Manchester. However, it's only 45 minutes down the road. And I think if you put on a good show and people have got used to, or hopefully got used to the standard of show we put on, we thought, you know, folks will travel. And they do, like you say, they travel from all over the UK. I mean, I'm generally, despite being sat here in front of a camera with you now, I'm generally someone that doesn't normally do this type of interview. I'm quite happy behind the scenes, known mostly to the trade, of course, and not so much consumer facing. Although it's a family show, you know, my wife, my daughter, and family and friends, they come along and they all help. On a couple of occasions, I've had to put myself on the stage and speak to our guests when the hosts haven't been there or they've been caught up with something else, and that's all fine. And in doing so, I've revealed myself, and guests that have come along to the show have revealed some far out places that they've traveled from. I mean, we see the tickets coming in, and I mean, there are places that I don't even know, I have to confess. But we've had, you know, guests from local across the water in Ireland, anything from Australia to you know, the States. So it really does get people motivated enough to get on a plane and come and see us, which is, I think it's something that the UK should be really proud of. There was, I won't say who, but I can remember a very high up individual within one of the most recognized brands that exhibits, and they said, we have nothing like this in our country. Wow. The UK is so lucky to have something like this. So it succeeds because drummers are a community.
Yeah, I would agree. And we'd had Jared Falk from Drumeo on as our last guest, and we were talking about the heritage that the UK music scene has, despite its size and with its sort of position within the market is not necessarily the biggest. It has this heritage, and I think young drummers are keen to keep that going. That sort of heritage of of great drummers that we've sort of put out over the years, you know, and shows like yours is a chance for that to blossom.
Yes. I mean, I can recall. I forget whether I think it was the last one, the 2019 show. John Famularo caught up with me towards the end, and he said, you know, that what you've created here is something that, you know, you should all be proud of here in the UK. You know, you've attracted such a mixed group of people, varying in all ages, to come along and you know, get inspired and get motivated. And again, you know, he was just saying that the drumming community and the music community here in the UK is something that the world, I think, holds in high regard, regardless that we're a small island. You know, we should be proud of this.
Absolutely. So most of the people that will be listening to or watching this are end user consumers and won't really have an idea of the sort of logistical challenges of putting on a show like the show you guys put on. So could you highlight for those people just what it actually takes to get all those artists, all those distributors, all those retailers, all in one place at the same time? Because it's a massive challenge.
It's a fair undertaking. I mean, I won't make light of it. I mean, but again, the drum community are very unified. I mean, we speak with the brands, we let them know what's going on. I mean, from a logistical point of view, I mean, and this may have been no interest to your audience, but I mean, even down, I guess, to silly things like planning the hall, getting people in there in the right order, all of those things, trucks and lorries turning up at the right time. You know, because that, you know, simple things like that make a big difference, because if one thing goes wrong, everything stacks up.
The last show we did in Manchester, we were showing Sonar, and they turned up very late.
Those things happen, yeah.
Absolutely, it's just part of it, you know.
And that was one, you know, that's one obstacle where, you know, they turned up very late in the day. Thankfully, that doesn't happen that often, but
like at 10 a.m. the next day, no one has any idea.
No,
you know, and that's the real magic of it.
That's it. You don't know what goes behind the scenes, but yeah, I mean, the Sonar guys turned up late, or, you know, we'll have I can recall, and bless him, I've got to pay a tribute to Ralph Peterson, who sadly passed away this year. And I can remember Ralph, he'd done the show, and he was, we said our goodbyes. And normally I would travel back on Sunday evening, but I thought I'll stay in Manchester, and we'll have a relaxing start to Monday morning before we headed back. And little did I know, at 6 o'clock in the morning, my phone is ringing and ringing and ringing on my bedside table, to learn that to have a very disturbed Ralph Peterson on the phone to tell us that Thomas Cook had just gone bankrupt and his flight home that he had to get back for because he was teaching had gone into liquidation.
Man.
So I just one of those things you can never predict. And, you know, there's another flight in 10 minutes. It's this cost. I need to take it. Can we go? Good. And, you know, it's just one of those you can never prepare for. But I think in truth, preparing for shows is hard work, and people don't know what goes on behind the scenes. However, I think for all those people that have survived personally and businesses that have survived COVID over the past 12 months, I do think if you can get through this, you can get through absolutely anything.
Oh, yeah, I would agree. It's been a fascinating time for retail, you know. Instantly, we were an internet shop, you know, just overnight, and we're fortunate that we work hard at the social media side of it, so we have a relatively decent presence and communication with people. So, you know, we just keep turning up to work, really. You know, we don't really think about it beyond that. It's all solution based. It has to be. It's like putting on a show. It's like figuring out, okay, X, Y, and Z has happened. It doesn't matter. All that matters is how we fix it.
Well, everyone's got to move forward. I mean, conversations even earlier on today, whether it's the UK Drum Show or the expansion of the other shows that we're adding within the ACC in Liverpool. The question's asked, how does one plan for all of these things going forward? And the simple answer is we have to plan, as corny as it sounds, for the future. There's no point us all sitting around waiting for the perfect situation to return so we can all get back to the things we love.
Yeah.
So, I think, as far as April goes, and that's another reason for the date change, I should add, for all of those that bought tickets and they've been pushed on to this year, of course, and then on again to April. I'd like to, thank people that have supported the show and requested and been in touch with us and sent us messages about, we'd love to still come. Can we carry our tickets over, despite it being a change of date, a change of venue? And, I'd like to say to them all, thank you very much, because it's your support and the trade support coming together that means that, we've got something to aim towards. And the comments for Liverpool has been, very, very, very positive, I must say.
Good. So maybe backtracking a bit from my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the show was a kind of evolution of the Drummer Live?
Yeah, so, we're going back to even time before my involvement, in all honesty. But just to skip through the highlights. So there was a former publisher that I wasn't involved with that owned Drummer magazine back in its day, and they came about with the idea of Drummer Live. At that point, I worked for a small family publisher based down in the West Country, because that's where I live, and they acquired Drummer magazine. And really, at that point, the drum trade said, "Look, we used to have a show that used to go with this. What's the chances of you doing it?" So there I was introduced to Drummer magazine, and the concept, or certainly desire from the trade to have a show. And out of that came the London Drum Show. So for folks that don't know this, I used to work for the small family publisher that launched the London Drum Show, the London Bass Guitar Show, and the London Acoustic Guitar Show, going back 7 or 8 years now, if not longer.
Yeah. God,
so, and then, the media and publishers change hands with products, and whether it be shows or magazines. And I've been along for the journey with them up until a point where I just thought to myself, without getting too political, there's too many cooks, and I'd like to be the master of our own destiny.
Yeah, because where I was going to go with that, but I think you've kind of answered it, was why start a show?
Why start the show? Liverpool or Manchester?
A drum show, and I guess it was going to be a sort of 2-part question. In that, do you think there's still a sort of, I don't want to use the word responsibility, but a community responsibility to drummers and to the people that support things like the review mags and things,
There is very much a responsibility side of it, and it's funny because it's something that I've, throughout the last 12 months, has been very much, I've spoken to friends and my wife and family about, and it is a responsibility, because there are companies and corporations, and it's very much about the bottom line, and it's about spreadsheets. We've all got to make a profit. We've all got to pay the bills like everyone else. But the responsibility is, if I don't do it, who would, and how good a job would they do? So it is a sense of responsibility to deliver this to the community, because many, many years ago, there used to be general music shows where the whole band would come along, and which is of no possible interest to possible drummers, but it was a sense of community. It was somewhere for musicians to go. And I guess the other thing is, with so many distractions now, with the internet, gaming, whatever it might be, there is such a high value on live music. For me, that's really at the heart of it. For me, I owe a lot personally to live music and music. I think it's in our lives every day. Now, whether it's a jingle for an advert or a live gig or, going to a wedding or what have you, or even listening to music in the car, I think we listen to music all day long in some form. So if we can play a part for finding, encouraging music, but also finding the next generations of musician, because it is an art. It is challenging. I mean, the entertainment sector has got hit, I can't say as hard as everyone else, but equally, I would say, as hard as some industries. So it's so important that we have these places in place.
Yeah, I'd had a chat about, is it a responsibility of instrument makers to keep people playing and keep encouraging them to play? And some brands have taken it on. If you look at brands like Fender or Vic Firth or brands like that, which produce a lot of educational content for all levels. But this feels like that's a thing that you're doing as well. If it gets someone to get that dusty drum kit out the cupboard, then that can only be a great thing for everybody within the industry.
It's motivation.
Yeah.
It's motivating people to learn, to get involved, to improve. And you see the brands that you mentioned, there are companies out there that do see education as a route to finding musicians for the future. And that's just smart business sense at the end of the day. You can't just rely on marketing product alone. You've got to encourage people to want to become musicians and pick up an instrument. And another side of my business is Music Instrument News, which is a trade news website. But with the conversations that go on with all the manufacturers or the distributors, what's been really encouraging is, certain businesses have done very well throughout the pandemic. And that's obviously they wouldn't shout that from the highest rooftops because no one wants to admit some form of success in a pandemic when everyone's struggling. But the positive to take from it is the fact that they see and feel that it's new people, whether it's drums, acoustic guitar, whatever it might be, are picking up an instrument because they've got time on their hands. Life slowed down a bit. People have stayed in more because of legislation. And they've thought, I've always wanted to do this. I've got the time.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So
absolutely.
I think it's continuing that journey. I think that's the message for a lot of the brands, is that they've picked up new musicians that they hope will continue their personal journey with a musical instrument of some description.
Yeah, absolutely. Does that tie in then to the artists that you choose to showcase and to put on, so you know that you'll get one drummer that will teach, that maybe they're known for a certain traditional style, or is it just a case of who's around, or how does that side of it pick it? Because it feels like it should be tied into that responsibility somehow. I don't know.
It's a position of, quite simply, we can't please all the people all the time.
No.
And what I mean by that is musicians will have possibly their preferred genre of music, whether it may be jazz, funk, rock, whatever it might be. So the coming together of artists at the shows is really to try and tick as many boxes as we can, so that someone can take something away from seeing one of their idols or two of their idols and be inspired by the live performances. But then, of course, we have things like the Mike Dolbear clinic room, where it's a smaller environment, and there's a variety of different topics that are covered. And then what was supposed to happen for 2020, and I'm very pleased to say that I heard from him very recently, Mike Johnston, to use his words, is 1,000% behind returning to the UK Drum Show for April next year.
Amazing.
And one of the new features for that was a selection of artists, Mike included, were doing some lessons in a separate room, so another educational room.
Wow.
it really is giving people as many rich experiences that we can possibly squeeze into 2 days. If we had infinite space, infinite artists, infinite budget, and what have you, we would do more and more all the time. But I think for a 2-day show, there's 6 main stage artists on each of the days. There's education, there's Mike Dolbear, and then of course there's all the fabulous products that the exhibitors bring.
Yeah, that feels like quite a lot, man. That's a lot to sort of, for what, a 10 or 20 quid something for your ticket. It's kind of, where else are you going to get that?
Yes, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned the ticket prices because, I'm a father, I've got children. And, when you want to encourage, your family to be involved in a musical journey, we didn't want it to be cost prohibitive. I know, I mean, I've been to plenty of places, and some of the costs to take a family or, more than just yourself can be quite eye-watering, the costs. So
cinema?
Well, the cinema.
Just something as simple as going to the cinema now is 100 quid easy.
That was it. I mean, we went as a family of 4 to the View Cinema a couple of years ago, and it was like £85. Mm-hmm. It's just crazy.
Yeah. Wild.
So, yeah, I think it's incredible. I mean, I would say that, but I think it's good value for money. It's 20 odd pounds for a ticket, and people can be there all day. You've got the artists and clinics and everything else going on.
Oh, listen, man, we could put a clinic on in the shop, and it could be dependent. It's artist dependent, typically.
Of course.
Could be a tenner. And you're going to see that artist for 2.5 hours, maybe like a signing at the end. Well, if you kind of double that fee, you get to see 12 artists. You have educational rooms across 2 days, and then a further educational room if you want to take it. That's kind of amazing. It's kind of amazing to sort of be able to pull that off at that kind of money. I think I've spoken at length with people like. There's sometimes, maybe it's me, there's a sort of a misperception in the cost of things, even products. Like when people talk about the price of a pair of drumsticks, I've seen how that gets made. I've seen how that product gets made. I've been to the Vic Firth factory, so it's a tenner. It's not a lot of money for the it's 20 odd quid. It's not a lot of money, man.
There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that involves personnel or Vic, machinery and staffing and storage and distribution and everything else. And whatever your business is, you've always got to respect the fact that people outside of your business are not going to know the real innings,
No, you're right. So then, is it a case of how do you create that message of value for people?
Well, I think folks should hopefully see it for themselves to some degree. I mean, before we headed out, even going back to London Drum Show all those years ago, and again, when we looked at the ticket price, and the ticket price, to be fair, hasn't really changed in all those years that much. We've purposely kept it low. So I guess there will be drummers out there that have been along and been to a clinic or have had a lesson with whoever the artist may be. And in some instances, we've known for people to pay, 50 or 60 pounds for a relatively short amount of time with just one artist. Mm-hmm. So what can I say? It's good value for people to come along, whether it's the day or the weekend. And, for all the years I've been doing shows, we've never really been beaten up too much on the ticket price. So I think folks can understand that, the example you just gave, we're going to the cinema for an hour and a half being best part of 100 quid.
Yeah. It's kind of ludicrous, It's kind of ludicrous. Do you see there's a responsibility or a difference in responsibility from how you have to deal with the artists versus how you have to deal with the public? And because it's 2 different sets of needs that you need to meet all weekend. Yeah,
I mean, whilst we're endeavouring with expanding the show for next April, covering various sectors of musical instruments, not just drums, my experience of the drummers that have come to be at the show, whether it be a clinic or main stage performance, I would say, in general sense, that they're of low maintenance. I mean, everybody wants to know who the diva is. But I've got to say, you know, some of these are, I mean, they are total pros. You know, that they'll turn up, you know, the international guys, the US guys will, you know, they'll fly in. You know, when it was in Manchester, there'll be a flight into Heathrow, and often another internal flight from Heathrow up to Manchester. Yet they'll turn up having hardly any sleep, with a smile on their faces, and you know, no real issues. You know, I suppose for me, the success of it being almost hassle-free with the artist comes down to the team that work with me. Because whilst I'm sat in front of a screen with you now, the show isn't just me. You know, I'm fortunate enough to have friends and colleagues in the industry that they're pros at what they do. You know, whether it be, you know, Martin Oldham at Drum Tech Support, who most people within the industry will know who he is, regimented, completely on it. And people like Martin, who's, you know, an unsung hero, who sits behind the curtain and works with the guys to make sure those drum kits are set up, the artists are happy. He is one of the reasons that we don't have hassles or problems with the artists, because, you know, I think there is a video on the UK Drum Show website with some of the impartial comments from some of the drummers that have come to play, you know, whether it's Dom Famularo or Nicky Glasby, and their experience of physically coming to the show, being at the show, being treated well and professional, and it running as a well-organized event is one of the reasons probably why I don't get too many complaints or problems. Apart from things like Thomas Cook going out of business overnight and Ralph complaining he's got no plane. But
you know, solution-based thinking, man, you'll get it. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, guys like Martin are amazing. I remember Martin's first ever clinic tour when he came to Scotland was with Tama and Simon Phillips, and having to set that kit up. So to see him go from sort of being kind of quite rightly very nervous to just absolutely bossing backstage is amazing to watch. It couldn't have happened to a nicer guy as well, because he's a total gem.
And he's a pro. And the thing is, because he's so professional with what he does, you know, don't forget that when the artists arrive at the show, apart from either correspondence with email or, you know, a Zoom or a FaceTime call, that they don't know much of me apart from the event that I organise and host, let alone Martin, who stood behind the curtain for the best part of 2 days.
Yeah.
But they arrive and Martin puts them at complete ease, and he's got a skill because he's very authoritative, if you know Martin. And when folks turn up, this is what needs to be done, and there's no ifs or buts or maybes. This is how it will happen. And I think artists feel relaxed because they don't know Martin. They're turning up to a show in a foreign country after not sleeping much, and they need to be assured that, because no one of our artists is going to want to feel embarrassed because something hasn't worked or been set up properly. So people like Martin are the real unsung heroes here.
Yeah, and I think what people maybe don't realise is each one of these artists have various sort of conditions within their rider. You know, they might be the guy that wants to be hands-on tuning his own kit, or it might be, here's my settings, just all I want to do is rock on up, and every sort of variation in between all that. So to sort of balance and manage that all day for 2 days for 3 or 4 rooms is kind of amazing, you know.
Well, everyone's singing from the same sheet, I guess, because the efficiency of the show is down to good time management, as straightforward as that might sound, but it is simply that. You're right. There are artists that will want to just freestyle. There are others that want to play to backing tracks. There'll be others that want to do a bit more interaction. I mean, I make reference to Dom Famularo again. You know, he personally took it upon himself that ahead of his appearance on the main stage, he stood at the entrance of the auditorium and shook everybody's hand as they came in, which I thought was a really nice touch. So it's funny how, whilst they're all operating in the same space, over the weekend with the auditorium in particular. The moods vary so differently with the style, character, or genre of music that these guys or girls will be playing. And again, it's down to Martin, with hats off to Martin, that he manages these guys with their expectations of what they want to do whilst watching the clock.
Yeah, and it feels like the whole production's egoless. It doesn't matter how he feels about any of it or how any of the backstage staff feel at all. It's sort of over and above them, if that makes sense, which is pretty amazing. So if, fingers crossed, everything goes without a hitch, what do you see as being the evolution of the show from here on in? Do you still see it being a big retail event as well, or do you see that changing? The way people buy has obviously shifted greatly in the last year, and retail has been a part of these shows for a long time,
Yes, I mean, speaking to yourselves and as an online retailer, I suppose I have to confess the shows were never set out necessarily to be a retail experience. It was never that case. And I guess what I mean by that is, there are plenty of experienced staff in retail shops that can, that they see their regular customers all the time, they engage, or if they're online, they've got an online audience and what have you. But from the show side of it, it was very much more of a tactile arrangement. And what I mean by that is customers can visit stores typically 364 days a year.
Yeah.
And they know all the brands, but what they don't necessarily know or get to experience is the people behind the brands, or the distribution of those brands. So when I first, even going back to London Drum Show days, it wasn't about stack it high and sell it cheap, because for everybody that's a race to the bottom.
Yes.
It's about supporting one another. So whilst guests can buy things at the UK Drum Show, and there may be a show special that the odd company might put together, it's really about being shown and taught about the product and identifying with the product, rather than a pushy salesperson trying to sell something. Not that I'm saying all salespeople, and it is a commercial exercise. The businesses are there; they want to lay out their table and show their wares. But for me, it is an exhibition. It's for people to come along, look at product, get inspired, take in a clinic, take in a performance, and to go back to their local retail shops and take that enthusiasm back to those music shops and go, oh, you won't believe who I saw at the weekend. I was at the UK Drum Show, or I tried this amazing snare, or have you seen Meinl's new cymbals, or Zildjian's new hi-hat, or whatever it might be. Let's go and see Billy in our local drum shop. Sure, they've got them there. So it's really top down, I guess. We want to put on a show.
It's kind of lovely to hear that, actually, because it as a sort of coming from the retail side of it, it can often feel like there's an expectation from the public, not necessarily from the back end, that it may be stack them high, get rid of them, and that's the last thing we necessarily want as well, because that doesn't end very well.
It doesn't end well for anybody. I mean, look, we've all got access to Amazon and Google and what have you, so we can jump online and see, save a penny here, save a pound there, and that's all well and good. But in the same way and the same ethos of putting these shows on, musicians and music lovers have got to support their local music shops, because they are local. We may have an event once a year in Liverpool, and that's 2 days. The music retail shops, whether it's online or whether it's bricks and mortar, they are there 365 days a year. And folks have to support them, because if you're going off to a gig in an evening and something's gone wrong during the day, it doesn't care how quick you can click on the Amazon button. It's those local retail shops that will save your bacon because they've got the expertise, whether it's fixing or providing a solution. So coming back to the show, we're happy for people that want to buy and sell, but it's got to be about supporting the shops.
Yeah, and I guess it's community growth, isn't it? Because that is one takeaway that we get, is we make relationships with people.
Yeah.
That we've never met before, and they come up to the booth, whoever they're there with, and we talk about the gear and we have a chat, and then the next thing you're sitting having a coffee talking about Bonham,
Yeah.
and it becomes this relationship that you carry on for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it goes beyond the 2 days of the show. It is. It's the experience that sticks. Now, whether it's an artist or whether it's somebody on one of the booths that's been really helpful or answered a question about a product that they're interested in or whether they've got, that's what sticks.
Yeah, absolutely. So am I right in saying as well that you're tying it in with the bass show this year or next year?
So, yes. So, of course, both the drum show and the bass guitar show was due to run in 2020. And I mean, the absolute stress and fear as we were heading towards March with things going on as they were. I can recall speaking to another event organizer of a guitar show, I think that took place in February. And we were sharing notes and we were saying, this is getting very close to the mark with these, the information that were being shared and some of the cautions and warnings that were coming. And we were thinking, oh, goodness me, here we are. But so yes, with having to postpone both the drum show and the bass show, moving it to Liverpool enabled us to bring both back simultaneously under the same roof, because the venue is so much bigger. But I suppose for whether it's drummers that are watching this or their bass brethren that might be shared this video in the future, who knows? The shows have still got to remain and have their own identity. We've got communities, but drum and bass is the rhythm section. There are plenty solo drummers out there, but music is a collaboration, isn't it?
Big time, yeah, for sure. It just feels right, man. It just drums and bass together, it feels right.
Drums and bass knit together very nicely, and they will be in neighbouring halls. They will have their respective artists with performances. And I have seen, there was some apprehension when we said about putting it in the same building, because it wasn't to mingle the shows, but it was to put them on at the same time in the same venue. And what was really encouraging was when we put out an announcement on the UK Drum Show socials, was how much the drummers said, fantastic,
amazing,
place next door, which was really, really quite satisfying to see that people really thought that was a good idea. And for those that have, and again, coming back to the ticket pricing and keeping it in check and keeping it balanced and it being about an experience, folks that buy a bass guitar show ticket or a drum show ticket can go between either event.
Amazing.
At no extra cost. They just need a day or a weekend ticket, and they can flip between. And if they really fancy it, there is in another hall, there will be electric guitars, and in another hall, there'll also be acoustic guitars.
It feels like kind of serendipity, like I can sort of see people that are thinking about maybe sort of not quitting, but they've not played as much, and then the next thing they're having a conversation with a bass player who they didn't realize was like 3 streets away from where they live, and they end up getting together and playing, and it just keeps carrying on music. It's amazing. It's a great idea. I think it's really smart.
We've got to have some positivity, and it's also nice to have something to hang your hat on, because there are musicians that work for me across the review sites, and they haven't had gigs in a year. A good drumming friend said he hasn't practiced in ages, and he just thinks, with the news of the show on the horizon, despite being a year away, so it's almost a kick up the backside to go, right, hang on a minute, who am I? I've lost some identity here for a minute because I'm not doing what I normally do.
Yeah. Yeah, for
And
sure.
that everyone can probably relate to that who plays a musical instrument. It's been, apart from practicing, you're not out there gigging, and that's the rush of doing this, isn't it?
Absolutely. Very, 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 very true. Well, mate, I really appreciate you taking the time to come and chat. I'm really excited that the show's back. I think it's been super. We've been there for all three. And it's been always a great time. The artists have been great. You know, it's like we've talked about, super pro, super slick. What are the social media handles if people haven't found them yet? Do you know them off the top of your head to just let people know?
They are just simply the UK Drum Show.
Great.
Nice and straightforward.
So on all like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that kind of stuff?
Right. Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, mate, I hope we get to see each other in April again. This episode will come out in a couple of weeks, so we'll be sure to make to tag you and share it all out. And once again, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure.
You're very welcome. Thank you to all of your viewers as well that have bought tickets for the show and continue to buy tickets for the show. We look forward to seeing you all in a few months from now.
Absolutely. You take care till then.
Take care.
See you, mate. Thanks for listening to this episode of Drummers Only Radio.
You can find us online at www.drummersonly.co.uk.
Drop us a line. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Drummers Only UK.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. We're on Apple, Spotify and YouTube.
Any questions? info@drummersonly.co.uk is the email, or if you need leads, it's leads@drummersonly.co.uk.
Thanks again for listening,
and we'll see you next time.